I love plasma so much, I have 3 plasma-related projects going on right now, 2 of which are these. And we'll get to these a little bit later, but the 3rd is on this desk. This is our December Patreon terrain, the Plasma Pipes, an entire network of interlocking terrain, perfect to give your models all the cover they need, with pipes, ports, tees, and generators. All the terrain on this desk was printed for us by Only Games, and if you want to get these parts printed physically, that is the place to get them. One of my all-time favorite pieces of Games Workshop terrain is their plasma generator. And the fundamental flaw with this piece is that the plasma and the generator are one part. So when you're painting it, you either have to be careful or you have to mask off the generator, which is also just being careful. Our plasma pipes are perfect in that the plasma is separate from the generators, and that should make priming an absolute breeze. And would you look at that? It's already primed, and it was super easy, and it's already looking pretty good with the 2 colors going on. If I was a little bit lamer, I probably would have sprayed all the pipes silver and all of the plasma pink. But I want to make it much harder on myself. I broke out some brown paint. I could have sprayed my pipes brown, but I didn't have any brown spray paint on hand. And this is better anyway, because I want to have a little of that black show through the layers of color. I gave each piece a dusting of brown, although my final pipes will be far from brown. This is just step 1. And step 1, part 2, orange. I put on less orange than brown to create a rusty metal look. I have tried in the past to get a good rust going with mixed success, but painting many feet of rust should be just the practice I need. Terrain painting can be tedious, but I'm really excited for plasma because of all the little victories this project is gonna give me. I got the rusty rust on there and a layer of satin varnish, and I wanna mess around with some chipping medium. Although rusty pipes with the glowing plasma would look pretty sick, and if I ever get into Necromunda, which I'm going to, might have to make a couple more of these, but right now, I'm thinking blue. I sprayed a purple mixed with blue as a shadow color over a very thick layer of chipping medium. When working with this stuff, I want to make very thin layers of paint, and that is best done with the airbrush. Although I have done it in the past with a brush, but the airbrush is better. After getting a dark blue-purple on the bottom halves of each part, I moved on to a tealy blue, spraying this from above like a zenithal. Right now, I am laying it down incredibly vibrant, but after everything else I intend to do to these pipes, they will look nice and grim-dark. Working with chipping medium, the clock is ticking. It's best not to let the paint sit for very long, because as the paint cures and hardens, it gets harder to chip off. I hosed each piece down with water from the airbrush and then got to work with my old toothbrush. This paint is very fragile, especially with this much water, and that is exactly what I want. If I just spritzed the paint, I would get fewer and smaller chips. I want this stuff to look like it's hundreds of years old, and a lot of the paint is worn away. The toothbrush was working really well. The paper towel didn't. It worked, but it pulls off the water, which I need to get the paint to reactivate and chip away. What I found surprisingly effective was using my fingers and hands. This didn't absorb the water, and the slight grit of my skin worked perfectly to coax the top layer of paint off. Using all these techniques in conjunction, I got my pipes looking awful, which is exactly what I wanted. That turquoise really punches you in the face. It is almost psychedelic pipes, but I gotta trust the process. I have a few more steps in mind, and I think it'll bring it back down into the realm of grimdark, and it'll look pretty cool. But now I gotta put on some metal. The walls of the pipes are rusty iron, but for the connection points, I want brilliant stainless steel, or whatever the 41st millennia's version of corrosion-resistant metal is. I used blue tape to mask off the rust, and even without a layer of varnish on top, I didn't get any more paint chipping off, because there's no water to reactivate the paint. I got all my connection points silvered, and they do a good job of breaking up the color of the pipes. As well as the pipe ends, I picked out the other decorations with gold, and there's quite a few skulls hidden around, probably in loving memory of previous workers and crew who got unlucky with rogue plasma discharges. Each of these skulls got hit with some tan. These pipes have quite a bit of detail, and each part has a separate control panel. I dry brushed these silver and then glued them into place. Now that all the elements are picked out, I dusted every piece with some transparent inks, a yellow-green and a dark indigo. Spilling these over the elements I have painted helps to blend them all together and make them look more realistic. All of the pipes are now complete. All in all, it's actually about 15 feet of pipe, as absurd as that sounds. If we laid them all out in a straight line, it would pretty much go down our driveway. And I'm in love with this color I bought, Antelope Brown. This stuff is the color of grime. If you ever want to make something look really yucky, just give it a little spritz into this. But now is the hard part. I have to pick the color for the glow. And everything looks good, really, for Plasma Glow. I mean, blue is classic, Dawn of War pink is phenomenal, red and orange also have a certain charm to them. But I have fluorescent pink. So I think I'm gonna get a little chaotic. Fluorescent paints have been very hit or miss for me, but pink seems to really shine. I mixed this into my airbrush and was shocked that the coverage was okay. It's pretty thin, but typically fluorescent paints are super transparent, and you have to lay down the whole bottle if you want to get the color to really show through. I hosed down all the plasma coils, spraying them on the stir sticks I taped them to, so it was more like 5 objects instead of painting 50 individual doodads. And as a reminder, these doodads are our December Patreon pack. Subscribers at the terrain tier will get all of this terrain. That is some hardcore pink. Holy cow. I think it does need some kind of a highlight, but there's something about fluorescence that it almost feels like pure saturated color, even though it's technically not. I sprayed a line of white paint down the center of each coil. The airbrush is perfect for this as it spills in a very interesting ways onto the ribbing, sometimes illuminating the proud bits and sometimes pooling in the recesses. It makes for some of the pinkest and weirdest objects I have ever painted. Because this is a plasma project, I get the joy of a little victory because there is some assembly required. They have been pinked. This is the strangest 2 piles in a terrain project. Bright pink candy worms and a big pile of rusty metal. But now this is the moment I've been dreaming of. This is the moment I've been waiting for. I get to flim my flams, I get to butter my biscuits, I get to jingle my bells, I get to put the pink plasma in the blue generators. Very last plasma coil. Yeah, just squish that glue right in there. Ah, it is glorious. Very, very chaotic. The pink really makes it feel like Dawn of War. I haven't seen this many plasma coils since college. And what on earth does that mean? Well, it has to do with what's in this bag. This is a collection of 3D printed parts I made in college, and you'll probably recognize it as a 40K plasma pistol. It's based on some of the artwork from the old 6th edition rulebook, and it might look a little amateurish, but there's a reason for that. This is truly my plasma gun, because I actually digitally designed all of this myself, and I 3D printed it in Architecture Studio. This is probably iteration number 3 of my plasma pistol, and it's not particularly perfect. The handle is remarkably uncomfortable. It's very hard to digitally design a comfortable hand tool, but I could finish this up, and now that I have all of these plasma pipes in front of me, I'm thinking pink would look really good up here. But speaking of plasma pistols, there's a few little plasma goodies left in this terrain pack. The plasma must flow, but it flows through the pipes. How does the plasma get from the pipes to smaller applications? That would be the plasma hauler servitors. In the world of Warhammer, there are numerous jobs, and one of the worst is being a literal battery. This little cart fills up its plasma tanks and then rolls on to wherever it's needed. I gave each of these little rovers a base coat of gunmetal and then glazed on some black paint, reinforcing the edges, seams, and rivets. I was thinking about doing a wash, but I want much more intent values than a wash would give me right now. Now for that driver, or what's left of him. I base coated a skeleton with some cold gray and then glazed on some warm brown. These 2 colors make the skeleton pop, which he needs to next to the glittery metal color. I mixed my gray and brown with white to do a few layers of highlighting, then a wash of Games Workshop contrast paint appropriately named Skeleton Horde, and then a final highlight of white. Now I applied a wash over the metal, which darkened it a lot and helps make my skeleton driver stand out. Behind the cockpit, there's a control panel where commands can be typed in on a lovely neon green glowing screen. And on the edge of the treads, there are some hazard stripes, so that the still living workers can watch out. Although if they do get run over, I guess they just become the next wave of battery servitors. And then I glazed a transparent blue over the metal to give them a chromy look, and I painted the proud parts of the hazard stripes yellow with a shadow of orange. And my little batteries are ready for plasma. I glued the coils into place and then attached the pilots, and these little vehicles are ready for action. My little battery boys! These guys are adorable. They grant the benefit of cover, and I think, if you're fun, if you take a shot within 6 inches of one of these guys, you have to take a hazardous roll, because you never know when your lasers or bullets could hit this guy and it'll explode. These take the plasma out of circulation, and the way they do that is from the plasma ports. And of course, the port is a giant head. These skulls are a very important part of the plasma network and are often vandalized. Because they can actually pull plasma out of the system, they are built much sturdier to resist explosions. I gave him a T800 inspired chromey look with some gunmetal, with a silver sprayed on top, then some contrast paint through the airbrush to darken the recesses, then a black wash all over, and then a dusting of transparent blue. To prepare the skull for his plasma brains, I sprayed white in preparation for some object source lighting, and then sprayed over these areas with the same fluorescent pink I used on the coils. Then I attached his brain with some super glue. Now Keith. They're little skulls, But there's still one last problem facing my plasma pipes, and I think that's a problem we've all run into before. What do you do when you got too much plasma? Well, in those cases, you reach for the old plasma discharger. This little skull is probably the most important part of the entire operation, and it comes in two modes, normal and vomiting. I painted these up just like the plasma port, and then painted the plasma discharge white. Then I sprayed it pink and did a final highlight with some white. Sometimes you can have a little too much plasma, and when that happens, instead of your pipes bursting, you can just let off a little steam. Or the fourth state of matter. Bleh. This is what I love about the grim, dark aesthetic. It is very practical. You had too much pressure in the system, it needs to be released. But the way that it's kind of anthropomorphized, releasing that energy is kind of like exhaling, and exhaling is something people do. So the machine that does that should look like a face. It's so macabre and sinister, but functional. I really love it. And with that said, everything is now painted. And if I get some magnets in these suckers, I get to put it all together. These pipes need 5mm by 1mm magnets, and I planned ahead for this. The couplings are all metal in color, which makes these shiny disc magnets look right at home. Usually magnets are hidden, but these are nice and hidden in plain sight. The magnets are in place, and I now have a full bottle of super glue on my fingertips, and it actually reminds me of another time I had a full bottle of super glue on my fingertips, and that is Plasma Project number 3. Wow. This is my Fallout New Vegas plasma gun. Some assembly required and quite a bit of work still needs to be done on this sucker, but my favorite all-time video game gun, and of course, it is plasma. I truly love the science fiction idea of plasma. It's not the real sci-fi version, or the real science idea of plasma. It is energy snow. This magical sci-fi death goo, I now have a table full of it, and I want to see what it looks like. My love affair with plasma has reached new heights, or maybe new depths. This is a lot of pipes, but I don't care. The plasma must flow. I really like Kill Team on open boards, but it's really tricky to get the terrain just right. With these pipes, I can make infinite boards that give really good movement and cover. I could even see this terrain making its way into some custom scenarios for Fallout Wasteland Warfare, and it would give me a great excuse to break out the plasma pistol. And one thing our 40k terrain collection is severely lacking is terrain under 2 inches to provide cover, and boy, have I been feeling its absence going up against Sean's guard tanks. This month, we decided to rectify this gap and now have more than enough terrain for several tables. All the STLs are available at our Patreon. Thanks for watching.